restarting after a break without the shame. Welcome to the podcast Why. I'm Brett Johnson, my podcast guy, your trusted friend in podcasting. This show is here to help you reconnect with the real why behind your podcast so you can keep showing up with clarity and confidence. Today, I want to talk about something a lot of podcasters quietly carry around: shame about taking a break. Maybe you missed a week. Maybe you disappeared for 3 months. Maybe your weekly show hasn't had a new episode in almost a year. Every time you open up your podcast app and you see your own stale feed, you feel this little sting. I blew it. I'm inconsistent. I'm not a real podcaster. If that's you, I want to say this clearly. A break doesn't mean you failed. A break is data. It's information. It's your system telling you something about your capacity, your season of life, or, yes, about your why. The problem is the story you tell yourself about what that break means. In this episode, I want to help you see your break differently, not as a scarlet letter that disqualifies you, but as a signal you can learn from. We'll look at what's really going on behind those gaps in your feed, and then we'll talk about how to come back in a way that's honest, sustainable, and anchored in your why, not in guilt. Let me share a composite story I've seen over and over again. Imagine a host, we'll call her Tasha. Tasha launched her show with a lot of heart. Her why was solid. She wanted to encourage people going through a specific kind of struggle, and she had real experience to draw from. For the first stretch, she was consistent. Episodes went out weekly. She got a little feedback, a few reviews, and some quiet but meaningful emails. Things were moving. Then life happened. A busy season at work, family stuff, a health scare. Nothing dramatic enough to become a public storyline, but enough to knock podcasting down the priority list for a while. She missed 1 week, then another. Then she looked up and realized, I haven't released an episode in 2 months. Here's where it got interesting. The problem now wasn't time. She could technically find an hour to record. The problem was shame. She'd open up her podcast app, see the date of her last episode, and hear this voice inside her. Who are you to talk about consistency? Your listeners have moved on. If you come back now, you have to explain yourself. You have to apologize. You have to have a really good reason. So she didn't come back. Not because she didn't care, not because her why had died. She didn't come back because the fear of how it would look on the outside was louder than the quiet, steady pull of her mission on the inside. When we finally talked, she said, I feel like I've ruined it. I'm embarrassed to even open my own show. That was a heavy place to be. So we slowed down and I asked her some different questions. First, when you started this show, who was it for and why did it matter? She answered easily. Her why was still there. Then I asked, does that person still exist? Do they still need what your show offers? She got quiet and said, yeah, probably more than ever. Then we looked at the break itself. I asked, what did the break actually tell you? Once she got past the self-judgment, she could see some things clearly. For one, her production schedule had never really matched her life. She was trying to do a weekly show in a season where bi-weekly would have been more realistic. For another, her format took more energy than it needed to. She was editing too heavily, chasing a level of polish her listeners never asked for. In other words, the break wasn't a verdict on her worth as a podcaster. It was feedback. The way you were doing this wasn't sustainable in your real life. Her why was fine. Her system was what needed to change. We worked on a simple reentry plan. No big confessional. No 10-minute apology monologue. Just an honest, grounded start to her next episode. Something like, you might have noticed it's been a while since the last episode. Life got full for a bit. Today I'm back and I want to talk about... And then she moved into the content. Back into serving the listener her show was always for. We also made a strategic shift. Instead of committing to weekly forever, she reframed the show in her own mind as seasons. She planned a shorter, focused run of episodes around a specific aspect of her why. That gave her a clear beginning and end, and it removed the pressure of an endless, undefined commitment. Once she let go of the shame and started treating her why like an anchor instead of a whip, it got a lot easier to hit record again. Her listeners, most of them either didn't notice the gap in a big dramatic way, or they were simply glad she was back. The story in her head had been much harsher than the reality in her headphones. If you've taken a break, whether it's 2 weeks or 2 years, here's the most important thing I want you to hear. A gap in your feed does not cancel your why. It just means something about the way you're doing the show wasn't working in that season. So instead of beating yourself up, let's get curious. First, name the break. Say it out loud. I haven't released an episode since what month, what year? Take a breath. Then ask yourself, what was happening in my life and my work around that time? Be honest. Were you overloaded, burned out, bored, resentful of the format, discouraged by the numbers? All of that is real information. Now, next, go back to your why. Ask, does my core reason for making this show still matter to me? Does my listener still exist? Do they still need what this show is meant to offer? If the answer is no, if your why truly has changed, that's a different conversation. But very often, the answer is yes. The engine's still good. The vehicle needs work. So here's today's why question. If you came back to your podcast from your why instead of from guilt, how would your next episode sound different? And what's one small change you'd make to your schedule or format to make that possible? Practically, that might look like deciding to come back with a short I'm Back episode that focuses on serving, not apologizing. It could be shifting from weekly to bi-weekly so your real life and your podcast are actually compatible. And it could be planning a 6-episode mini-season around one aspect of your why instead of promising yourself an endless run. You don't owe your audience a dramatic explanation. You owe them your presence and your honesty. A simple, grounded acknowledgement is enough. It's been a while, life got full, I'm back today because this still matters, and here's how I want to help you in this episode. If you'd like help designing a comeback that feels true to your why and realistic for your life, that's exactly the kind of thing I work through with podcasters. You can book a clarity call with me. Just head over to My Podcast Guy online and look for a book a clarity call link. We'll look at why the break happened, what your mission really is now, and what a sustainable version of your show could look like going forward. Thanks for listening to the Podcast Why.